can't explain it, how important it is, in life and business, mental health, being able to deal with struggles in life. Very few of us, we all have struggles. You can throw a rock down the street and you're going to hit somebody. We all have struggles, right? No matter where you are, who you are, we're dealing with pain. We're dealing with life issues, and so that's why I'm really proud to have in the chair today Brian Cuban, because Brian really found his voice.
Thanks, Tommy. We've known each other a long time, and I'll bet you don't even know some of the story, right? I mean,
no,
I've been, an eating disorder at 18. I was an alcoholic by 18. I was addicted to cocaine by my 26th year. A near suicide attempt at 44, were my first of 2 trips to a psychiatric hospital.
Jeez.
Jail. 3 failed marriages as a result of drugs and alcohol. one more, I get a free set of steak knives. And, so it's been quite a journey.
Yeah, so through that journey, because I firsthand lived it, not myself, but with my brother. And we lost him about 7-8 years ago to drugs and alcohol. And it was a 40-year battle. He couldn't escape it, right? And so I don't know what the demons that you have to deal with inside. I don't know the demons my brother had to deal with inside, but I know from a family member the stress and what that does to a family unit. And I'm going to want to talk about some of that stuff,
Sure.
right? And how that affected you. Because so many people look at somebody that is having a drug problem or an alcohol problem, and they go, well, they don't really care. They don't want to be better. You pivoted. You made it over the hump. Did you, when you were in the midst of it?
I didn't want to be better. If you came to me in 1990 and said, get out of this, Brian, I said, what are you talking about? I mean, I'm doing blow. I'm dating girls half my age.
Yeah.
I'm getting in any, especially when Mark became famous, internationally famous. I'm walking in any Dallas nightclub. What are you talking about? Why would I want to give this up?
I'm on top of the world.
Yeah. Now, of course, it had nothing to do with me, right? I was the biggest douchebag on the Dallas party circuit. I really was. But especially with cocaine, they say cocaine's fun till it's not, right?
Yeah.
And it can become quickly not. The cocaine and the alcohol, I lost my career as a lawyer.
All right, so when you're in the midst of that, when you're at the point to where you're losing your career, right? Like my son, my brother was losing his children. That's the most precious thing we have. And I'm going, if that doesn't sober you up, so you're losing your career, your family's probably so angry with you. At what point do you say?
It really took until 2007. It was let me give you a quick anecdote on how crazy things got. 2006, when the Dallas Mavericks were going to the NBA championship for the first time.
Yeah.
As you might imagine, I was going to get some pretty good seats from those games, right?
Probably.
For those games, Mark owned the team since 2000.
Yeah.
I also had the opportunity to get some tickets for friends. And so I got a couple more tickets from Mark, and I didn't give them to my friends. I didn't sell them on eBay. I traded them to my cocaine dealer for $1,000 in cocaine for scalper prices. And and when I was selling them on eBay and stuff, I thought was disrespectful. But trading them to my drug dealer was perfectly acceptable. Was okay. So my dealer shows up at my house, Tommy. He gives me this giant Ziploc baggie of blow. I give him the tickets. I go running up to my home office, dump it out on the desk, looking at it like I'm Scarface, right? I want to go rub my nose in it.
Oh my God.
And of course, I had to do some. Get out the credit card, roll up the 20. And cocaine users, we're an ironic bunch, especially in pandemic times. You use the Purell, you wash your hands, scrub it raw, but we'll shove a dollar bill up our nose.
And God
that's been used by God knows who and has God knows what on it. That go figure, right?
Yeah.
And so, but cocaine had long stopped giving me the feeling of power and self-love and acceptance when I did it for the first time in downtown Dallas in a nightclub called Bonash.
Wow.
And now it was just pain and shame and paranoia. I got all paranoid that I was going to get caught and the cops were outside. I go peeking out my nailed shut windows. There's no one out there. The curtains are nailed shut. That's how paranoid I am. And I take all the cocaine. I put it back in the Ziploc baggies. I drive to a home improvement store where I buy electrical faceplate outlets, a drill, and a saw. What's he going to use those for? I drive back to my house. I go to the drywall in my upstairs closets with the drill. The saw, and I create these fake electrical outlets. And I have the faceplates, and I take the cocaine and put it in smaller baggies, and I slap it behind all of these fake electrical outlets, seal it back up.
And you're thinking this is rational.
And I'm thinking it's rational, and I am the smartest lawyer ever. Like the DEA, the cops, and the drug dogs have never thought of that before.
Yeah. Wow.
And so I line out a couple more rails, and again, it's just pain and shame and paranoia again. About an hour later, I go back to the same electrical outlets, take out the cocaine, go to my master bathroom, and flush it all down the toilet. Not because I'm paranoid. Now it's $900, right? I'd done some. The next morning, I wake up, I'm staring at the ceiling. Brian, you didn't. What? You flushed all your blow down the toilet. There's another game. And so, what an idiot you are. So I call Mark again. I get 2 more tickets. I call my dealer again. He shows up at my house. He said, dude, you did all that last night? I didn't want to tell him I flushed it down the toilet like a moron. So I said, yes, give me more. He said, okay. Rinse, wash, repeat, Tommy. Back up to my home office.
No.
Dump it out on the desk. Line it out. Again, just jitters and bad high. And there was never an epiphany that maybe I have a problem. It was maybe I need to change dealers, right? He's putting speed in here or whatever. Maybe I need to change out the Grey Goose for the Jack Daniels, only the best because I'm a high-class addict.
Yeah, of course.
Of course, my drug dealer delivered. Come on, I was high class. And I take the cocaine again. I put it behind those same electrical outlets.
Wow.
Go back to them now. I lasted about 2 hours, took it again, took it out again, went to that same master bathroom, dropped to my knees like I had done so many times, praying or hoping for someone or something to take away the pain of my life, and flushed it down the toilet again. But they say when Dallas flushes, it runs downhill to Houston. So I think some people in Houston had a little hop in their steps.
Telling you.
And I can laugh about it now, but those were, what's insanity, right? Doing something the same way over and over and expecting a different result.
Yeah, let's talk about...
That's how it got.
Let's talk about you're on your knees in your bathroom.
I was on
You're
my
at the
knees,
lowest point.
And that wasn't even the low. At that point, it was the lowest point.
But tell me about that pain. Tell me
it was
about
unimaginable.
What you were feeling. Was it just in your head, or was your body actually aching?
My body was aching, and my mind was aching. My spirit was aching. My spirituality, because it was the ache of a little boy who was bullied, who had a very volatile relationship with his mother, who was physically assaulted over his weight. I was a very heavy kid, and who never felt loved or comfortable in his own skin, and determined that the only way I don't want to talk about myself in the third person, could get comfortable was with substances. And it was an instinctive search throughout life to find that one thing that allowed me to love myself, to allow me to look in the mirror when I get up and walk to the bathroom, birthday suit naked, and love that person. But the teenage Brian, the young adult Brian, the middle-aged Brian, the going 40s, and just spent all his time hating himself, self-loathing. And that's what really was about. People talk about stress. People talk about all these other things that can trigger, addiction. Right. Lawyers were type A, this and that. For me, it was trauma.
All right, so
It was trauma.
let's go back for a minute. And you're a kid. You're in high school. You obviously you had some issues with
Yes.
your weight.
I was an obese kid.
And so what made you decide to be a lawyer? Why did you go down that path?
That's an interesting story. I was an 18-year-old at Penn State University. I was a criminal justice major. I wanted to be a cop.
I mean, that's a great school.
That would have worked out well, right? Being a cop. I'd have been the first guy in the evidence room trading out the blow for the baby laxative, believe me.
There's a book for you.
Yes. And I was also suffering from an eating disorder. I was bulimic. Yes, guys do get eating disorders.
So was all this pressure about your weight led you to having an eating
Yes,
disorder?
it was trying to, if I got thin, I'd love myself, and my mother would love me. And my mother did love me dearly, but we had a very difficult relationship. It was all about trying to love myself and trying not to hate myself. So if
Now,
I
you had a couple other brothers.
yeah, Mark and
Obviously,
Jeff.
Mark
People
and
know
Jeff.
Mark. I have a younger brother, Jeff.
Okay. And so what was happening with this relationship with the three of you? Did they have issues too?
No, not to my knowledge. Mark went off to Indiana University. Well, I was at Penn State. He's a few years older than me. And Jeff Jeff ended up going to school in Texas. He was a nationally ranked wrestler. We're all born and raised in Pittsburgh.
Okay. Wrestling was a big thing in
Yeah.
Pittsburgh.
And so, no, not to my knowledge. This was me. But you have to remember, when you talk about birth order, Mark is the firstborn. He was out, as you'd expect, he was outgoing, selling this door to door, selling that door to door. I remember our local newspapers went on strike. Mark, barely old enough to drive, he and his buddies drove to Cleveland, 200 miles away, bought their newspapers, drove them back to Pittsburgh, sold them on a street corner for twice what they paid.
That's genius.
At 16 years old, he knew how to spot need, right?
Yes.
Jeff, again, the nationally ranked wrestler, the youngest, beer party, jock, the girls, the dates, the prom. You know, I was classic middle child syndrome. I was shy, I was withdrawn, and I internalized anything negative said about me and wore it as who I was, like a skin-tight suit.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a very difficult relationship with my mother. My mother used to come home from selling real estate, and I'd be in the kitchen. I'd come home from school eating, I remember, Chef Boyardee ravioli out of the can. Loved it. Beefaroni, ravioli. And not all the time, but every now and then, she would say, Brian, if you keep eating that way, you are going to be a fat pig. This is what her mother said to her. Yeah. I suspect this is what my great-grandmother said to my grandmother. Fat shaming in families is often handed down generationally. My mother was dealing with her own psychiatric issues. Her grandmother was a diagnosed schizophrenic. They had a awful relationship, mentally and verbally abusive, just absolutely awful to witness as a young boy.
As a young boy, you watched this.
Yeah, watched it, yes. Yeah. There was a lot of grandparent alienation in my household, and I love my grandmother dearly. Yeah. So that was very tough for a young boy. And then to hear these things, and I want to make it clear that I'm not blaming my mother, right?
Right.
There's a difference between cause and correlation.
Absolutely.
And so it could be anything that causes to trigger something. But I began to eat more, and I got even bigger. And the bullying increased in school. And this was well before the internet, obviously. It was brick and mortar bullying, right? Where people called you the fat pig and this and that. Go to Sears and get a bra for your boobs and stuff like that. And it hurt.
Of course.
And the bullying all culminated in what I call the day of the gold pants. Of course, you're going to remember the disco era, right?
Oh, that's scary.
John Travolta, yes. Saturday Night Fever.
Yeah.
I was a freshman in high school, 1976. Mark was teaching disco. He was 18. He was teaching disco at a club called Odyssey or something like that in downtown Pittsburgh. And he would come home, Tommy, wearing these platform shoes and these bell-bottom pants of flowers and different things. But that was the era we were in. And one day he walks into my house, into my bedroom. I spent a lot of time in my bedroom isolating because that's the only place I felt safe.
Sure.
And he's holding up this pair of shiny gold bell-bottom disco pants. He said, do you want these? I said, sure. I grab them. I love Mark, and he's giving me these pants. But Mark wasn't a big guy. They fit him okay.
Yeah.
I had to jump up and down, spray the water bottle. My butt looked like 15 cats trying to get out, but I didn't care. I wore those pants to school, and the kids made fun of me, and my gut was hanging out. And one day, I'm walking home from school with these kids. It's a mile walk from the high school to our house in Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. And they're making fun of me, this group of kids. And in my mind, you have to remember, we didn't have the internet. My images of popularity were the kids I saw every day. The kids getting their first kiss, their first date, walking down between the lockers in the hallway, holding hands, all the things that I wanted so badly but didn't feel a fat pig deserved. And one of the kids pulled at the zipper where it's bulging on my shiny gold bell-bottom disco pants, and it ripped just a little bit. And another kid goes, ooh. He pulls at it and rips it right down the zipper to the crotch. Next thing I knew, these kids had physically assaulted me. They'd ripped off my pants down on my Fruit of the Loom tidy whities, and I remember I was wearing a Pittsburgh Pirates t-shirt, and they threw them out in a busy street, cars whizzing by. They went on high-fiving like they had done the funniest thing ever. I go out in the street, pick up the shreds, cover up my crotch and my underwear, and waddle home. And that 1 mile walk of hell might as well have been from Boston to Seattle. That's how long it seemed it took. And I remember, Tommy, that the worst part of that walk were the stoplights. There were 2 stoplights. And at each stoplight, it seemed that it took an hour as I'm standing there in my underwear and people are looking at me, kids in the window, passengers and drivers. No one rolled down their window to ask if I was okay. I finally make it home. The house is empty. It's funeral quiet. I walk down into our basement, and I remember it was these old blue wooden chairs at stairs, and the stairs squeaked. Just the way wood squeaks, the way it creaks and groans. And these creaks and groans I had never noticed before, but each one sounded like a gunshot fired into a pond where the waters ripple out, right? Where the water ripples out if you throw a stone in.
Of course.
And they were rippling out to my father, who ran a trim shop, customized cars 2 miles away. He was going to say, you can't stand up to bullies, get out. He wouldn't have said that. To my brothers, who would have said the same thing, they wouldn't have said that. They just said,
thinking that.
Yeah. In the mind of a 14-year-old, it seems so real. My brothers would have said, where are they? Let's go. We're going. Come on.
Yeah.
And to my mother, who would have said, I told you so. And she wouldn't have said that. She loved me dearly. But in the mind of a young man, a young tween, it all seems so real, those consequences.
Right.
And going back to school, I mean, going viral in those days meant 15 kids in the lunchroom knew what had happened, right? And they're passing notes about it, and they're all snickering. And so
how did you go back to school?
Well, I found a wastebasket, and I buried those shreds, hoping it would bury my shame, bury my trauma. But that's not how shame and trauma work. Shame and trauma remember. Shame and trauma thread through life. And they have a way of boiling over when you least expect it, and you may not even know that's why it's boiling over, because you've compartmentalized that trauma and saying, I'm over it.
Yeah.
Right? That is, I'm over it. And so I get back to school, and there were the Snickers, and it was around, and my solution was just to isolate myself even more. I mean, I had a couple friends, and we were kind of the rejects, right? If you've ever seen Animal House, where they put them all at the table, and I really just slid through high school, not a good student, just ashamed, and I began drinking in high school because that's the only way I just deadened the pain. And as I went on to Penn State, my freshman year in Penn State, I'm thinking, okay, everything's going to be different. I'll meet new people. But half the people from the high school I went to, Mount Lebanon, they went to Penn State, and some of those bullies were there, so you have to face them again.
Yeah.
And so I developed an eating disorder, but every pound that I lost, and this is 1979, when nobody was talking about eating disorders for anyone.
Right.
Right? The wonderful singer Karen Carpenter would pass away from complications related to anorexia in 1983. This was 4 years before that, and I'm a guy,
Yeah. Forget about it.
Forget about it.
There was nobody to talk to.
Nobody to
nothing
talk to.
read.
No one understood it.
Yeah.
And I got thin and I lost weight. But you know what? Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw a fat pig. I saw a fat pig. And it was the beginning of a revolving cycle of dysfunction in substances, even anabolic steroids, that I would carry into my 40s and that I would go take through law school, that I would take into the practice of law, and that I would take till I hit my rock bottom, Easter weekend 2007.
So what I'm really interested in is why the law, and did that have that the power of being a lawyer, did that have any influence on why you did that, or did you just love the law?
No, neither. The reasons I went to law school are going to shock you. I went to law school because...
A girl.
Nope.
Oh.
Because I could spend 3 more years, law school was 3 years,
Yeah.
and I could spend 3 more years binging and purging, drinking, and I had also developed exercise bulimia, which is obsessive compulsive exercise for the primary purpose of offsetting calories. I was running up to 20 miles a day.
Jesus.
But these were my coping behaviors. These were kind of my, if you remember Snoopy and Peanuts, this line of security blanket.
Yeah.
This was my line of security blanket of coping behaviors that if I went out into the world, that I was going to have to give up. And I didn't think I was able to do that. And so if I went to law school, that's 3 more years where I can engage in these behaviors and not have to face myself. That's why I went to law school. That's it.
Wow.
No other reason.
Did you end up loving the law?
No, it was miserable because I never wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to hide.
All right. So you're 5 years old, 6 years old. You had a dream. What was your dream? At 5 and 6, a lot of people say, I wanted to be a fireman, a police officer, whatever.
I don't remember at 5
did.
and 6. I remember as approaching my teens, I wanted to be Billy Joel.
There we go.
And I wanted to be Billy Joel rap when nobody really knew who he was.
Yeah.
Prior to The Stranger coming out, I wanted to play the piano like Billy Joel. That was my dream.
You want to be a performer.
I wanted to be a performer. Yeah. I don't know if I thought about it in those terms. I wanted to be Billy Joel.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to be able to sing and play the piano like that, particularly the piano. Mm-hmm. So I took piano lessons, and what I learned is that I could learn to play by repetition and sight, and I got pretty good, but I did not have the gift of ear, listen, play, write, listen, play. I did not have that gift.
See, that was my problem. I thought as a kid I was going to sing and dance my way through Hollywood. Nobody told me I can't sing or I can't dance. So it was a rude awakening later in my life, as a 19-year-old kid in Hollywood and going, okay, well, I really don't have a lot of rhythm here.
Yeah.
And I played guitar all my life, but I could never hear it.
Yeah.
And it was so frustrating.
You have to be able to hear, write a note, hear, where you can just play. It reminds me, what's the movie with Matt Damon, Good Will Hunting?
Yeah.
When he's talking with, what's her name, the character?
Yes.
And she says, I don't understand. He says, well, whether it's Mozart or whatever, he could sit down and he could just play.
Yes.
I didn't have that gift.
Yeah.
But I could get good by repetition, right?
Yes.
See the notes, read the notes. So that I was so shy meeting girls and stuff. And so I remember it became kind of a way for me to meet girls, whether it was a bar in Dallas that had a piano. I'd go and I'd play. I got really good at playing scenes from an Italian restaurant.
Oh,
and so the girls would come up, ooh, yeah. And so it became kind of a way to meet people.
I love
it. But, I just didn't have that gift. And I wandered aimlessly throughout life without, I hated the law. I worked for
How long were
people
you
and
How long did you practice?
well, I passed the PA bar in '86, but I didn't practice in PA. I took a Greyhound bus to Dallas for $200 and met Mark at the bus station and moved in with Mark. And then I wouldn't pass the Pennsylvania or the Texas bar until '91. I failed it 3 times as a result of drugs and alcohol. And I remember the first time I took the Texas bar exam, you know what my study aids were, Tommy? Out in this roadway motel, roach infested in Fort Worth, because that's where the bar exam was.
Yeah.
The weekend before was an 8-ball of cocaine, a fifth of Jack Daniels, a liter of Tab, and some bar review books I'd borrowed. That was how seriously I took it.
No kidding.
I did not want to be a lawyer.
So let me ask you a question, because this is something that I've wondered about, and I've faced it to some respect with my brother, but my brother was an older brother. And I've seen, and I've, a lot of friends that have become big celebrities as actors and entertainers and athletes, and being a brother of one of the most well-known guys in the world, and have had tremendous success. And, we're proud of what Mark's done. Did you ever find that being a problem, having the brother, not, did you ever have to try to live up to that or not live up to it? What kind of pressure
It absolutely
did you feel?
became a problem for me, but it was a problem of my own creation, right? This has nothing to do with Mark.
Right.
When you don't know who you are, when you have no self-identity, or you're just an empty shell of pain, and your only identity is to hate yourself, it becomes very easy, or at least it was, to say, I can be that.
Yeah.
I can be Mark Cuban's brother, and I can get drugs, I can get girls, I can walk into clubs in Dallas, forget outside of Dallas, forget it, right? But I can walk in clubs in Dallas and not wait in one line. And I call it name fame. I can be that. And so rather than fix myself and build break it down and build it up, that was too hard.
You took the easy
That
route.
was too hard.
Yeah.
And I was not about to do at that point in my life what was too hard. I didn't do that until I got sober, right? And that was hard. And so I became that. And as I said, I also became the biggest douchebag, right? In Dallas, out there snorting, drunk. When Mark bought the Mavs, I was showing up, I would go into the bathrooms and do blow, at both Reunion Arena and the American Airlines Center. It was just, and to me, if you would have asked me if I wanted something else, I'd have said, hell no.
Yeah. Listen, I've seen it, like Tom Hanks, right? Huge fame, and his kids have to live under that. Right. Yeah. And it's affected several of them in a very tough way.
Yeah. And that's, the nepotism, that's a little bit different dynamic, right? Brother to brother. Though Mark and my brothers, we love each other dearly, right? Yes. We're close. We text and do all the time, talk. But, I became, in my mind, I was an embarrassment. I was a family, when it finally started to just beat on me, when the cocaine wasn't working anymore. When the alcohol wasn't working anymore. And there was no amount of cocaine, there was no amount of this that was going to fill the hole. And I could no longer just be Mark's brother. That wasn't working anymore. And so in the summer of 2005, I decided to end my life by suicide.
Oh my God.
Because I felt that I was a black stain, and that was the only way to end the pain, right? A permanent solution to a temporary problem. But when you're in the middle of it, it doesn't seem that way. So I got a .45 automatic, and I sent a friend of mine, Angelo, a disturbing email. He got a hold of my brothers. My brother Jeff came in my house, I believe it was July, and the .45 automatic was on my nightstand. Cocaine lines everywhere, alcohol bottles, Xanax too, because I was Xanaxing through the day and cocaining through the night. Makes it hard to practice law, right? Tommy,
it makes it hard to live.
I've done cocaine. Yeah, I've done cocaine in the state courthouse, the federal courthouse. Wow. I've gone to trials, under the influence of both Xanax and blow. And I remember I told someone, he said, well, didn't you know you can go to prison for that? Well, yes. I didn't say I was stupid. I was addicted, right?
Yeah.
What's the definition of addiction? Compulsive drug-seeking behavior despite known and negative consequences. Yeah, of course I knew it was bad. But Mark showed up later. I remember he came in from L.A. and they'd cleaned up the house and dragged me kicking and screaming down to Green Oaks here, our local psychiatric hospital. And kicking and screaming. They're trying to save my life. And I'm just thinking, get out of my life, right? Let me go back to the people who truly love me, and at least until the cocaine runs out.
Yeah.
And they weren't having any of it. And we're sitting in the room. It was this room, and they're in there. I'm in there, the psychiatrist and the psychiatric nurse, and I'm screaming at Mark, screaming, blaming him, blaming his fame, blaming everyone but myself, refusing to take responsibility for my recovery. And so it also occurred to me, I'm a lawyer, head clearing a little bit, that they were trying to put a psychiatric hold on me. And so I started saying the things I needed to say, so the psychiatrist said, I can't.
Wow.
I can't sign off on it, right? Because he's not an immediate danger to himself or others. Well, what about the gun? Well, he just seems okay now. And so they had to take me back home.
Oh, my gosh.
And here's what, Tommy, I would be disingenuous not to acknowledge the enormous privilege I enjoyed in both addiction and recovery. Right? They say addiction doesn't discriminate. It can hit anyone, and it can.
Yeah.
But access to resources does discriminate based on privilege.
Yes.
Right? A lot of people do not have access to the resources. The vast majority of people in this country do not have access to the resources that I have had in my life.
Them, that's why they're on the street.
That's right.
And they're breaking into homes or in prison.
And depending on where you are, I mean, there are none. It's just awful. Right. You have to wait for a bed or this or that. And we could talk all day long about a broken treatment system. But, and so I had resources, and I could have gone anywhere for rehab, residential treatment. But I refused. I refused. So they took me back home, and they took my car keys. The moment they left, they weren't going to tell me what to do. I got a cab. I went to the dealership and got a new set of car keys.
Oh.
And I had a couple thoughts. Well, now they know, right? Now it's in their face. Whatever they suspected, and I know they did, but now it is in their face that I have a problem. So am I going to go to treatment? Nah. Am I going to go to 12-step? Nah. I'm going to bring the party to me. I have a drug dealer who delivers, right? I'm high class. So I'm going to do that. And that's what I did.
And you're going to tell everybody, oh, I'm doing good.
Doing good.
I'm doing well. Don't worry about me. Let me have some more Mavericks tickets.
Yeah.
So I can keep feeding.
And I'm going to shrink my world to this big.
Yeah.
To this big. And that is exactly what I did. And here is privilege again. Enormous privilege. Mark put me to work for him because I was no longer practicing law. I wasn't earning a living, right? Run out of money. And so Mark put me to work for him and kind of trying to pull me up by my bootstraps, right? He's trying.
Of course.
But I was showing up to meetings, hungover, under the influence. And so he had to pull me out of that. And Tommy, yeah, this is massive privilege. Mark was just giving me a salary. I wasn't doing crap because he didn't want to see me under a bridge. Is that enabling? Well, enablement, you look at enablement through the rearview mirror, right? And enablement is tough for any family because figuring out the gray area between love, enablement, and recovery is brutal because you only know what it is in the rearview mirror.
That's right.
And so, but what he did and what my younger brother did is the reason I'm sitting here alive today talking to you. So I love them dearly. And fast forward to January 2006, I'm out at this bar called the Candle Room in Dallas, in Knox Henderson, and it was my birthday. And my birthdays back then lasted until the couple 8 balls of blow started and they ran out, right? This bar, I'd go to Miami or go to Vegas or wherever. And I'm in this bar. I'm in this bar, and this girl walks in. She's with some friends. Her name's Amanda. And we start talking, and and I must have had one of the last, I call them Fan of the Opera masks that we wear to show our spouses we're okay, to show our family we're okay, to convince them to lie, right? Or convince ourselves of the lie.
Yes.
Even though they're starting to see, or they do see. And we started dating. And she didn't do drugs, very light drinker. And I convinced her to move in with me.
Wow.
And I remember one of my friends asked me, Brian, you do what you do. She doesn't do what you do. How's that going to work? And I said, well, I'm going to stop. So now I'm in the first stage of change, right? I've had enough. I'm thinking I've had enough. I'm going to stop. It's time. I can't do this anymore. I was just tired. I was so tired of lying and trying to be something, trying to project this image, and I just couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't do it on the street because everyone despised me. I just couldn't do it. And it was Easter, and I didn't stop. I worked around it and say, how could you work around it? I had a JD in law, but I had a PhD in BS. And I see it all the time in families, right?
Oh, yeah.
Spouse doesn't know, kids don't know this, or they suspect, but they don't say anything. They don't want to say anything because they're afraid it'll wreck the family, until a tragedy happens. So Easter weekend, 2007, she goes away to Houston to visit her family. They lived there at the time. I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to go out. I'm going to go down to this nightclub, and I'm going to have a good time. And by the time she gets back, she's coming back Sunday evening, I'll be showered, and I'll be ready to go. And I haven't even talked about jail. I went to jail for DWI. But, and so she goes, I go out. Next thing I know, it's Sunday evening. I'm lying in bed. She's staring down at me, her head over me. Wow. There's cocaine everywhere.
Oh, my God.
There's alcohol. I had a blackout.
Wow.
Almost 2 days had disappeared. She's also a lawyer. She's trying to figure out if she walked in the right house. I'm looking around my head, trying to get my wits, trying to figure out what lie I can tell to explain this Law and Order episode, orgy of evidence, that I just might not be the person I represented myself to be. And of course, there was no other explanation. All I could think of was kind of a metaphorical running home to mama. I said, take me back to the psychiatric hospital. And I named to Green Oaks. Wait, you've been to a psychiatric hospital? We'll talk about that later. I need the drive to think of a better lie. Mm-hmm. So we get down there, and now I'm standing in the parking lot of this hospital for the second time in my life, waiting for check-in. She's crying. I'm thinking she's going to leave me. I'd leave me. She didn't leave me, Tommy. She stuck with me, and we dated for over a decade. Well, I rebuilt the broken trust, found recovery, and now we've been married over 7 years, and we'll have been together almost 20 coming up in January.
Dude, I'm so proud of you.
So not all relationships will survive that, but ours did because she's a saint, but because also I had to do the work, right? Mm-hmm. I had to do the work for me, not for her, because she could have left, not for my brothers. People die, pets die. Trauma is a huge trigger for relapse.
What's fascinating is that you had to make that decision because you were just tired.
And
you were exhausted of it all.
I was. And the two other things I thought about, one, there wouldn't be a third trip back. I'd be dead. I didn't think I'd have another trip back. It would be over. And then finally, I thought about my father. My father, Norty, who was a veteran of the greatest generation, a veteran of the Pacific. He was a CB, fought in the Battle of Okinawa, fought in Korea, ran an auto trim shop for over 40 years with his older brother. And what that is they reupholster car seats and stuff like that. He worked on cars in this little trim shop for over 40 years until he retired.
Wow.
And he was the middle of three boys like me. And he used to say to Mark, Jeff, and I all the time, he would say, guys, no matter where you go, no matter what happens, whether it's across the state, across the city, or across the world, you pick up that phone, you make sure your brother's okay, you tell your brother you love him. This was the relationship he had with his brothers. Although, his brother, there are fights, and sometimes it was like a bad marriage with his older brother at that shop.
Of course.
But I remember that gift of family, that bond, which is also a privilege in recovery.
Yeah.
And I was just throwing away that gift. I was throwing it away because my family had enough. They still love me, but they were distancing. I would too. I wanted to see my brothers. I wanted to see my nieces and nephews. And that was it. So the next day, I walked into the rooms of 12-Step, and I sat down in that chair. And I remember I was crying, and I smelled I hadn't changed. And I remember thinking, Tommy, that as I listened to stories and embarrassed and just humiliated in the corner, it was fine. It took me a half hour to walk in the room because I thought, I didn't want to be recognized. I walked in there and half of them were lawyers I knew. But you know what I wanted? It wasn't even about whether I was an alcoholic. You know what I wanted more than anything in the world and why I really planted myself in that seat? If planting myself in that seat, in that room, would allow me for the first time in my life to wake up, walk to that mirror, birthday suit naked. Remember that little boy?
Oh, yeah.
Look at myself and love myself without the aid of cocaine, alcohol, or any other substance. I would sit in that chair. And now I have over 18 years in recovery, and I still sit in that chair.
That's just spectacular.
So it's been quite a journey.
There are so many families suffering with this exact, millions of families across this country. And drugs have taken so many lives. Out of everything, and I'm sure you've told this to people, but out of everything, in a simple paragraph sentence, what do you say to people that are suffering with this? Not that it's going to change lives, but what changed your life enough? How can you simplify it?
I say I go through this all the time. Talking to people, I say that don't use my situation as your guidepost, right? Every person's story is unique to themselves. But what I will tell you is that you are loved. Somebody will help you. And so the scariest part is putting your foot out over what seems to be that abyss and knowing you will be caught. Think of the people you love. Think of what you are doing with projection in terms of they won't help me. Reach out to somebody because some people want to help you. The roadblock is projection. The roadblock is afraid that you will not be caught.
I have a niece that is in the throes of it. And 2 little girls that my sister is raising. She's given up her kids. Yeah. She keeps saying, I'm raising my kids. Well, she hadn't been around and the drugs have taken over. And she's been in 5 rehabs.
Yeah.
But I don't think for her. I don't think those rehabs were her decision.
It's got to be, you got to want it. Now we can get into cliches, right? Yeah, you have to want it. Family can't make, we hear this all the time.
Right.
Family can't make someone recover. I know families that have absolutely bankrupted themselves down to the felt.
Yes.
Right? Trying to find recovery for the people they love dearly in their lives. And I know people that have bankrupted themselves.
Oh, yeah.
A particular friend of mine, and then her son. I got her son into a transitional living center downtown Dallas for home, because they finally said, we can't do this anymore. You have to find it. You have to find your recovery.
Yes.
And he overdosed, fentanyl, and he overdosed. Not long after we got him in there.
There are no solutions.
There are no solutions, but I don't like to engage in platitudes because the things that motivated me aren't going to be things that motivate someone else.
Yeah.
They may not be. And so everyone, you just have to hope. I said, you just have to survive it, right? What I tell people is you can't recover if you're dead. And so
pretty straightforward.
And this is
yeah.
And this is where we get into, I'm a big proponent of harm reduction. If you're using fentanyl, if you're using heroin, stay alive. Do what you have to do to stay alive. I'm not going to preach and say stop, right?
Yeah.
Scare you straight. Stay alive. That's all you have to do. So use those test strips. Don't use alone. Make sure, and that doesn't mean you carry Narcan. Both of you carry Narcan, right? Because you can't revive yourself.
That's right.
So both people have to be carrying Narcan. Just stay alive, stay above ground,
until
we'll hope at some point it takes and you're ready.
Yeah, boy, that's just chilling. It's chilling to think that that all the wealth that this country has, and then on the other side, all the weakness that we have,
and all the moral judgment that we have. I mean, you know, they put a Narcan machine down in Deep Ellum, you know, and which is, for the people who don't know, is one of our club districts here.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of homeless, a lot of drug use down there, and people went nuts, right? Conservative Texas just went absolutely bonkers. You know, what? You know, you're not paying for my, you know, I can't get my insulin for free. And, you know, all of these non sequitur comparisons,
which is,
you know, when they're just trying to keep people alive.
That's it.
And there are people in this country, lots of them, who truly believe drug users' lives aren't worth saving. I've heard it. You know, I've heard it. And a lot of times it's not.
Until it's your child.
Yeah. They lose a child, then all of a sudden their tune changes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But,
which is sad that we have to get that far to do it. You know, okay. And thank you for being so upfront and putting all this out there, because it's tough.
And the cocaine using crowd too, Tommy. It was a different ball game back when I was doing it. Cocaine, you know, there are a lot of things that, despite what you hear, you know, marijuana is not traced with fentanyl and things like that. It's just, there are science reasons for that, but it's all BS. Every story you see turns out to be false. It's all BS. But cocaine is different. Cocaine can be laced with fentanyl. It is not. It is rarely intentional. It's because they cross-prepare it. They cross-mix it. The people who are preparing fentanyl and mixing it with the heroin, then they put the cocaine on the same board. That's how it gets in there generally.
Yeah.
So use your test strips. Get those test strips. They're still illegal in Texas. Get them anyways.
Stay alive.
Stay alive. Stay alive. You can overdose from fentanyl-laced cocaine. That is not a wives' tale.
So, and those are all so important factors, and you being honest and straight with all these challenges you've had through your journey. I want to touch on a couple things, because it's there is life after.
Absolutely.
And you made a huge pivot. One of the great things, and we're going to get to your books because I think that's a very important factor, but the beauty of what has come out of all this is you've gone back to this 10-year-old kid, 11-year-old young teen that wanted to be Billy Joel.
Yeah.
And you've been taking music.
I have. I wanted
singing.
I wasn't Billy Joel, but now I take singing lessons, and I have been for over 3 years. And I'll never be Billy Joel, but I can go into a karaoke bar, I think, and carry a tune.
So do you do that? Is that fun? Can you go?
I've gone a couple times. It's more, you know what, Tommy? It's more of an issue. I don't drink, right? And especially in Dallas, you don't have any it's all wrapped around alcohol. Yeah. And it never starts till 9 at night, and that's my bedtime. So it really has to be something.
We've gotten older, so that's how that happens.
Yeah. So it's harder for me to go out and do it because just because of the context to it all. It's drinking, which I'm fine because I just get a Coke, but it's generally late at night.
Yeah.
And so, but I do a lot. I have my karaoke tracks that sometimes I'll put on Facebook. I'll do a song, and I'm working on one now. Have you ever seen the show Justified?
No.
Oh, with Tim Oliphant, and it's great. And
is there a great music track to it? Is that
You'll Never Leave Harlan Alive is my new. It's the one I'm working on.
Well, I was hoping you were going to give me a little bit of
Billy Joel.
Piano Man.
It's 9 o'clock on a Saturday. The regular crowd shuffles in. There's an old man sitting next to me, making love to his tonic and gin.
There we go, baby. See, it all comes back around.
It does.
And how proud of you, or how proud of yourself are you to be able to do that, to now be able to just go put it out there, and this is who I am.
Learning to sing is a big exercise in vulnerability, right? Especially in today's world with somebody's always going to come on and say you suck, right? And there's a lot of psychology to it because people are always going to be unhappy with your voice because they compare you to people. You're not Billy Joel, come on. Well, I'm not Billy Joel, I'm Brian Cuban.
That's right.
And so for Brian Cuban, I think I'm getting there. I'm always a work in progress. And so people will always compare you. And so you just have to understand that you only have to be happy with yourself.
You remember when you were walking home and you had your tidy whities and these ripped up clothes, and you're standing at that stoplight. That is what you just did. You just were naked and in front of millions of people right on this microphone. You sang Billy Joel, naked as can be. And, you know, as a young actor, I remember I wrote my first one-act play in the 6th grade and then went to perform it in front of the whole school. But I was so scared. I was playing a doctor, a surgeon. I right when we were about to go, I couldn't.
Yeah.
I had to play the patient because I could have a sheet over my head. But when you're doing that, and then I ended up doing stand-up, right?
Yeah.
Naked, I feel like you're naked, and that was the toughest thing, is overcoming that.
Yeah. Oh, stand-up is definitely an exercise in vulnerability.
Yeah, just to get out there. And yes.
Yeah, but and so I enjoy it. Again, it's just something for me.
So is it an exercise to is it some sort of thing to accomplish for you at this point? I mean, when you do it, do you feel liberated, more liberated?
I do, and it's kind of weird. I think it's a Cuban trait. It's probably why I have a hip replacement. You know, I was a marathon runner. I've run 8 marathons. Now I have a hip replacement and have all kinds of health issues. But I remember when people asked me when I was running marathons, well, what's your goal, right? You want to, run the Boston or whatever? Faster. That's it. Faster. And for singing, my goal is better.
Yeah.
For better. And that's, I'm not trying to be anything but better. And I know that may sound weird. So I take lessons. I take lessons by Zoom with this guy out of Boston, Mark Baxter, every week. And that's only my goal, because a lot of time we don't even sing. We just do vocal lessons, right? My goal is better.
So many people, they think I have to be, I'm going to take singing lessons so I can go perform and be like Billy Joel. Or that I'm going to run in this marathon because I want to go compete in the Olympics. It's okay just to do something for yourself.
It is. It is. And for me, marathoning was an easy choice. It wasn't for all of the healthiest reasons, but because I was a loner, right? Yeah. It was something that I could do, and that is something that I could be. I found out I was not professional, right? Where you're doing it, competitively. Sure. But I was running, low 3s, which is pretty good when I was in my prime.
Wow, yeah.
And so I was okay at. And then running 10Ks and the 5Ks now, I mean, my mind tells me I'm running at 11-minute mile. I look, that's 13. Holy hell. So, I mean, it's just is what it is, right? But And,
so what are you doing today for a living? What is your?
I speak. I go around the country speaking at recovery events. I do a lot of law firms. I write books. I just finished The Body Brokers, was released in December, and The Body Brokers is about a lawyer who finds his girlfriend dead of a fentanyl overdose, and he and her roommate go on a kind of a quest to prove that it was murder.
So do you find what you're doing now in speaking and writing, is this a passion? Is it a love? Or is it just something you're doing to make a buck? I mean, tell me
I don't need to work. It's something
it's your passion.
It's a passion, yeah.
Something you love.
Yeah.
And it comes out in your work.
Yeah.
Because I see it and I read it.
Don't get me wrong. I mean, everyone,
Because you became a lawyer just because out of necessity, just to do
I became a lawyer because it's what I thought I had to do because I went to 3 years of law school. Right?
So I'm trying to understand is what you're doing now.
Yeah, what I'm doing now is I am passionate about recovery.
Yes.
I am passionate about recovery. I was just up in New York where Phoenix House in New York, the very well-known recovery, gave me and Jason Biggs awards. He's in recovery. He's very open about it for our recovery advocacy. I'm very passionate about it, and it's not about money.
Yeah.
It's not about money, and I didn't want to sound like privileged, and I know that came out wrong about don't need to work. It's not. I just mean it's not about the money.
No. Yeah.
I mean, it's not like I'm making, I'm not on the speaking circuit like Dale Carnegie, right, or whatever. Whatever the guy's name, the big they're out there speaking.
Oh yeah, making $100,000 up.
Yeah, no,
an
no.
event.
I'd go if people reach out to me, and if and I'll do it. I don't market myself at all.
You know, when you love something, and we talk a lot about this in business, and I say you should never go down this path because of the money. You should go down the path to be fulfilled and do something you love, because the money will come and you'll get everything. And money doesn't drive everything.
Well, that's interesting because
I mean?
Mark, he said it many times, might take a different approach to that. He says, don't follow your passion, follow your effort.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah. And you can Google that quote. Yeah.
But Mark, his effort is his passion.
That's right. That's right. And you would hope you would hope that, what's that called? The Overton window or what?
Yeah.
But I'll tell you a funny story about that if we have a few more minutes.
Yes, for sure.
So I had moved to Dallas and hadn't taken the Texas bar yet. And so I needed to make money, right? Mark says, you'll come work for me. And this was at the very beginning for him, a company called Micro Solutions, where they were doing
before he sold to.
Yeah, he sold that to CompuCom, and after that was broadcast.com.
Yeah.
So this was the first iteration, right? And they went into businesses and set up computers. This was the very beginning of the era.
Wow.
And so he says, come work for me. So I show up at the company. I'm in a suit. I'm with a briefcase with nothing in it, thinking I'm a lawyer. Come on.
Yeah.
I'm standing in the lobby. He comes out. He looks at me, shakes his head and goes, what the F are you doing? I said, I'm here to work. He says, go home, take that crap off, get rid of that ridiculous briefcase, put on your rattiest jeans and t-shirt, get back here, and you are working in shipping and receiving. You will start from the bottom like everybody else. There are no lawyers here. There are only people who want to get rich. Those were his exact words.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So he had a mission. Yes, we're going to get rich, and we're going to work hard, and we're going to do it.
Yeah. And and obviously he's passionate about these things, and now, now he's passionate about his cost plus drugs thing. So
no, which is fantastic, and he's obviously a visionary, and I remember early days. He was trying to do TV stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I remember he said, "Come out and I'm hosting this thing and see what you think," right? Because I was already been on TV for 25 years at that point. And it's interesting. And he went through all these iterations to be this television personality.
Yeah, he lived out in LA for a while.
But boy, with Shark Tank, he found his home.
Yeah.
He did what he does best. And
that's all. It was good. I mean, it's all scripted, right? But it's all.
Yeah, but your personality,
it's great.
personality comes out.
You get involved, you get invested in Mark, or you get invested in this guy or that guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's great. I love Shark Tank. But
and it's So that's fascinating, and now you have found really your stride. And how old were you when you went in recovery?
That was 2007. So I was born in 61. So I was 40. I didn't go in recovery until I was 46.
Yeah.
46. Yeah, now I'm 64, so it took me long enough.
How are you feeling today as far as your mission and for the rest of your life?
I feel good. I mean, I have good days and bad days like everyone else. I mean, I still struggle with depression, right? And I take Lexapro, so that exists independently of my substance use disorder recovery. So I struggle with that now and then, but I don't have the lows like I used to have.
Yeah.
And I have a better mental health toolbox for it.
And it's more open now.
Yeah. And I realize it took me a long time to heal that little boy, right? Because Brian didn't begin to heal until that old Brian didn't begin to heal until young Brian began to heal. And it took a lot of therapy. I'm still in therapy today for that.
No, and it's so important. There's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong
it's
with
okay
therapy.
to get therapy, people.
Everyone should have therapy.
Yeah.
Everyone should have therapy.
We need somebody to talk to.
So don't date someone unless they've been in therapy.
Very smart. In business, and we talk about it in business too, and but we talk about it as mentors, right? Mm-hmm. Get your mentor. It's like your therapist, because as a CEO or wherever you are in business, even if you're just even if you're just in the shipping department, right? You have to have those therapists,
That's right.
somebody to talk to on what are our goals today.
I mean, the same in the legal profession, right? In the legal profession, we know that over 20% of licensed attorneys qualify as alcoholics, and we know that from a study.
Wow, really?
Yeah, and when you look at I believe the general rate in the U.S. is like, I saw 8 or 9%, and you have to remember alcoholics has a spectrum, right?
Yeah.
So you could be here and be an alcoholic, so
right.
It just depends how you use the phrase, because it's a label, not a medical diagnosis, which is alcohol use disorder.
Yeah.
Is the diagnosis. So if you're talking like 8 or 9% for the general public, 21% for lawyers. I mean, we're a profession in crisis, and there's been a lot of awareness to it, and there's been a lot of the development of mentors.
Is that why you speak at a lot of law firms?
Yeah, because I wrote a book called The Addicted Lawyer back in 2017, right as this was all coming to the front. And that major study came out right around the time my book came out. Perfect timing, which I didn't even know the study was coming out.
Yes.
So all of a sudden, I was one of the go-to people.
Mm-hmm. So tell me, what's the future? What are the goals for Brian Cuban today? What do we all want to hang something on that wall.
I believe, in terms of hanging something on that wall, I'm not a big believer in legacy, right? And
I guess I shouldn't have said it that way, because I hate that when nobody wants to do that. You're going to do what's in your heart, and that legacy is going to happen.
Yeah, and whatever it is,
I'm sorry for saying.
And whatever it is, I'll be dead. So whatever it is, what's the difference?
Yeah.
But here's the way I look at it. I'm Jewish, and there's a Jewish phrase called tikkun olam.
Tikkun olam.
It means changing the world with acts of social good and acts of kindness.
Wow.
Right? So I try to live that as a spiritual, they say, am I religious? No, but as a spiritual mantra in what I want to be known for. Changing my little part of the world with acts of kindness. That's what I want to hang on the wall.
That's what I try to teach my family and my kids, and just those acts of kindness are so important. They'll change your life.
Those acts of kindness will resonate through families, even through generations, long after you're gone.
That's right.
And
that's what my mom and dad gave me.
Yeah, and so that's really it. I don't have any lofty goals.
That's a pretty lofty goal right there, pal. That's the biggest goal we could ever dream about.
Someone comes to me and reach out to me, and I'm struggling. I'll work with them, and this and that. That's it, right? What else is there? I'm working on a new book for me. A new novel.
Oh, good.
And unlike Pittsburgh, will take place in Dallas. And so I'm doing that. But yeah. Beyond that, I remember Mike Tyson did an interview. Whatever you think of Mike Tyson, right? He wears it on his sleeve, right? He wears it on his sleeve. So this little girl was interviewing him, and this is a viral video on YouTube. What do you want your legacy to be, Mike? He looks at her, and and he said, "Legacy? I don't give an F about legacy." This little girl's like, legacy is a made-up word that means nothing to me because I'll be dead.
Yeah,
I'll be dead. What do I care? Whatever people will say about me, I won't know. And I wouldn't be that blunt about it, but that's kind of the way I feel, right? I just want I'll be happy if I help someone in a family, and because of that, their family has changed in the way, life has changed for them, and it changed throughout generations because of maybe one little act of kindness. That's it.
Oh, my man. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you for being honest and thank you for your honesty and everything you brought to the table. It's so important for the world to hear these words. We talk a lot about business here, but really we talk about humanity and life and how that changes.
Entrepreneurs struggle with substance use disorder too, right?
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, entrepreneurs.
It's so tough when
especially in the tech world too. I mean, suicide rates and addiction. And so it is not pigeonholed. They say it doesn't discriminate. On that level, it does not.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the big problems we have is we set these monster goals. We're going to be the king. We're going to be on top of the mountain. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And your brother is someone that set these bars, right? And people talk about that all the time. You know, when my kid turned 13 years old, we had a party at our house. They were all in the pool and everything went quiet. And I went looking for all, it was 25 kids, and they were all in the pool house. And they had Shark Tank on. They're all talking about the new businesses and how they're going to buy yachts and mansions. And I'm going, no, just have the dream is so important.
And it's okay to dream. You're only 13, right?
Yeah, well, listen, we remember 13.
I do,
See, what I mean? 13.
Minds are less constrained by environment at 13, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Because you don't know what you can't do.
You don't know
so you don't know. You're not even close to knowing what you don't know.
That's right.
So the mind, you're free to explore and expand.
So I always I try to throw in something when I end a show about our puppy dogs and our pets and our kitty cats, and how important it is to take care of those guys because they take care of us, especially. We don't all understand. We all have different levels of stress, and you talk about on the spectrum. What we go through with mental anxiety, and we all are a little mental in our lives. We're just different places in that spectrum of losing our minds. But these pets of ours keep us grounded and understanding that unconditional love. And you have kitty cats.
I had 2 kitty cats, and unfortunately, 2 weeks from tomorrow, we'll have lost one at only 8 years old, siblings.
It's very young.
Mimi, and to cancer. And it has been. I'm still grieving.
Yeah.
The other kitty is still grieving. Yeah. So it's been hard, but I've adopted dog. I had a dog. I had a cat before that. Adopt. Don't shop. But and in Texas, unfortunately, they didn't. They had a bill that didn't pass to make it illegal to sell pets like that.
Yeah, well, we passed it here in Dallas. And we pushed the legislators.
Yeah, that bill should have passed. That was very disappointing.
It was.
But so we're in the grieving mode right now. But without great loss, there wasn't great love, right?
Boom.
Without great love, it's the other way. With great love, there is great loss.
So, and I know we're trying to end this thing, but it just keeps going on, and I'm having such a wonderful time talking about this. But I think it's important to know how your cats got you through some of your darkest
All my pets. I adopted these 2. They were barn cats. They were born on a boat in a barn.
Yeah.
And right at maybe a month after I lost Useless, yes, that was her name. We lost her to old age. Yeah. It doesn't get any, even when you know it's coming.
Yeah.
But
tell me about some of those, what they've meant to you, and some of your times.
I mean, I don't have kids. These are my children.
Yeah.
My pets are my children.
Do you ever find yourself struggling, right, with depression and things, and that those pets, those little kitty cats, those fur balls understand?
Absolutely, and
and come over and they distract you from some of those thoughts.
We're trying to take Butter and I are trying to, and my wife, we're trying to take care of each other right now, right? Because she's just now out of the searching phase, which is heartbreaking in itself.
Yeah,
just heart wrenching to watch her search for Mimi.
She just doesn't understand.
No, and so we're all taking care of each other.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. All right. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Tom.
Appreciate it.